So next up, we're going to Dr. Krishna Swami. And gosh, her story is really quite complex, and she will tell some of that early story, but she's a native of India and was able during her undergraduate studies to work in a food security project in South India. And that also led then to her master's work at McGill University. And a lot of her work, the way I understand it, was in bioengineering and biofortification, particularly working with salt in her postdoctoral studies. After she finished her PhD at McGill, she worked on several studies with fortification of salt with iodine and iron, double fortification, and has actually made a huge impact on the Indian population facing malnutrition with that work. She's received many awards, is extremely accomplished. In 2018, she was hired by the University of Missouri and established the Food Engineering and Sustainable Technologies Lab, the FEAST Lab, and she will talk about this. And she will kind of build the bridge here between the work that Abhinav just presented and the exploration of crops like millets in value-added products. And so I will pass on the torch now to Kiruba, and she will share with us her work. I think what's very exciting is that she's and the University of Missouri in general has been aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and she's very much focused on food insecurity with respect to these crops and other foods too. So thank you for joining us for this session, Dr. Krishna Swami, and we're very honored to have you on. Thanks.
Thank you, Minna, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's an honor to be in the presence of so many people who are interested in millets. So let me go into the story, how it all started. So it all started in India. This is Tamil Nadu Agricultural University. It's one of the oldest universities related to agriculture in India. And a lot of amazing researchers come out of it. And that's where I started my undergraduate. That's where I had the interaction with farmers. And this particular project was an eye-opener for me because I was studying food processing, and this project was aimed at improving the food security of women in rural communities. And how do we empower them? How do we teach skills like, this was a tomato processing plant. Like all the women were from rural parts of Coimbatore, they learned the techniques, because when we're talking about food, when you're talking about processing, it needs to be safe, it needs to be nutritious. So those are some of the key skills. They have the knowledge and everyone knows it, but how do we make it in a way that can be consumed by a larger group of people? So that's when I learned, okay, you can use the technological skills that we learn in the university to empower communities, right? When those two came together, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for my career, and sorry, this is what I want to do for my career, and it started a big. Excuse me, give me 1 second. So, okay, apologies for that technical difficulty. So I hope you can hear me better. Great. So it started with this particular project because when you discuss with women, most of the time you see all this extra knowledge that they gain. Every time when they come back, you hear the same story. I use that extra money to send my child to school or buy books. So this is how you create, when you empower one woman, You empower a community because they are going to bring the other women to the group. And that leads to a community, a change in the community. They are given the power, and that overall improves the livelihood of the whole community. And it also empowers the next generation so that they can lead a better life and have a have a system that is more nutritious and food secure and nutritionally secure. So that was my biggest learning experience. And that led to my next story. I came to Canada to do for my Commonwealth scholarship to do my master's in bioresource engineering and got my PhD. This is where we were trying to use agricultural waste materials, and see how it can benefit, develop value-added products. So that was another learning experience about how technology can be used to recover micronutrients or recover bioactive compounds. And then that led to another learning experience at University of Toronto, where this is where I learned how iron deficiency anemia, like malnutrition, becomes a very big problem. And we are aware of it, but we don't understand the intensity because it's a cycle. If the mother is affected, then the child is going to be affected. And then it's like a cyclic cycle. So how do we address it? The best way to address it through food, because if someone consumes, we could do supplementation, we could do diversification. These are all great opportunities. But if we want to create a real, a quick impact, diversification is great for long term. But if we know that a community is suffering from malnutrition or iron deficiency anemia, to stop that cycle, we need to have some solutions immediately. And that's where fortification came to place. And this is also a place where I learned the importance of multidisciplinary teams, because we cannot address these problems of food and nutrition security alone. We need people from the farmers to the processors to the supply chain to the end consumers. Everyone has to come together to solve these problems. So based on all these learning experience, I'm at University of Missouri, and I had the opportunity to start my own research program. And that's when, how do you bring all these knowledge or all this experience together? And that's the same time we were experiencing a lot of climate crisis. So the big question that my lab was asking is, how do you develop sustainable food and nutrition security systems? Because as we know, as we entered the 21st century, we did see a lot of calamities, from earthquakes to wildfires to the recent pandemics also. So whenever we experience these natural calamities or pandemics, the biggest community that's going to be affected is the vulnerable population groups. And the first thing that even during the pandemic, we would have seen people standing in lines to get food, right? So when food security is affected and people are not able to get access to food, then it leads to a long-term chronic hunger problems. And in the world, there are around 821 million people affected by chronic hunger. So that is, if you see 9 people, 1 in 9 person is going to be affected by chronic hunger. But there is something much more dangerous and that we don't hear much about is hidden hunger. So I'm just going to take a poll in the audience. How many of us have heard about hidden hunger? If you have heard about it, please give me a thumbs up or just put it in chat. Yes, you've heard about it. Hidden hunger. How many of you have heard about hidden hunger? I heard it's a class, right? So I teach, so I always ask my students questions. So we'll wait for 2 more minutes. If you have not heard about it, just put a thumbs down, okay? So we learned something. Did I say there's going to be a pop-up quiz after the session?
Yeah, absolutely, on hidden hunger.
Okay, so Jade says that they've not heard about hidden hunger. Thank you, Jade.
Very good.
At least we have And Nicholas says yes. Okay, because he's a panelist, so he'll know about it. So I'll go to Jade and address the student now. So what is hidden hunger is? Hidden hunger is due to micronutrient deficiencies. It affects more than, so okay, also in the chat we had Brandon and Jordan say they have not heard about hidden hunger. Thanks for your feedback. So let me start. This gives me where I should start. So hidden hunger affects more than 2 billion people on this planet. That is, if you see, that's literally 1/3 of the population. And irrespective of developed countries, developing countries, everyone is affected by this problem. It's due to micronutrients. And unfortunately, we leave around 7 million children before they reach their 5th birthday to malnutrition problems. It doesn't have to, it could be someone in southern parts of India to Kansas, some food deserts in Kansas City, right? When you go through this, I was shocked by learning and conducting research about this, because it's throughout, and that's why the term hidden is there, because it's predominantly among societies, but we don't talk about it, or we don't bring it as a big issue, because it affects the vulnerable population groups, predominantly women and children, and most probably in the lower socioeconomic status. So that's where you don't have access to good nutritious food, right? And that's also a leading cause for another thing called obesity. So I'll bring that story here. So I hope you now understand what is hidden hunger. It's due to micronutrient deficiencies. So when I started my research program, so one end of the spectrum, we have hidden hunger. And whenever we talk about hidden hunger, we always think about wasting and stunting. Let me pull my list. We always think about wasting and stunting, but actually overweight and obesity also falls under the same umbrella. And this is what we call the double burden of malnutrition. So I was talking about, population groups, either a community, Maasai community in Kenya, or Irular community in southern part of India, or a community, a food desert community in Kansas City area. So you will see both wasting and stunting and overweight and obesity among the same population groups. And recent studies have said that lack of micronutrient deficiencies could be one of the leading factors to create these double burden of malnutrition. So we have this problem on one hand. On the other hand, we waste around 1.3 billion ton of edible food that goes as waste. So, and when most of the foods, and 40% of the food that goes as waste is fresh fruits and vegetables. And these fresh fruits and vegetables, that's why you get a lot of micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. We've all been told from a very young age, like they are a very good source of vitamins and minerals. And also millets play a very important role because they are a high source of micronutrients. So the question that we ask is, what if we can learn the technology? In nature, there is nothing called waste. Waste is a terminology that is created by humans, right? So if we can learn how nature creates circular systems to prevent waste or to recover these materials, these bioactive compounds, and then we will not be calling this as waste, but rather raw materials for our processing, right? And then we could, if we know the way to recover it, and then we will be able to address this problem of malnutrition. So this is a whole vision of my research program, and we do know there is no single solution or a single silver bullet to solve this problem, right? But everyone can contribute. So how we contribute in our research lab is, one is sustainable food systems engineering, where we recover these micronutrients, or add value to the indigenous plants. So we predominantly focus on indigenous plants, and this is where the millets fall into play. So how do we add value? How do you develop systems to create, to recover micronutrients, to preserve them, to so that when someone is consumed, they're getting the right, the complete nutrition. And once we are doing this, sometimes we need to do some encapsulation techniques so that all the vitamins and minerals that are inside the food are kept intact. So we do a lot of encapsulation, and then we fortify them back into food so that the food is complete. Like, you get all the micronutrients, all the proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals that could address this problem of hidden hunger. So whenever we address this, we align it with zero hunger. Okay, and the groups that we are interested in, women and children in urban, rural, and tribal communities. So, as I said, this particular thing, like the zero hunger here, aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goal 2, and these are all interconnected goals, from climate resilience to biodiversity loss. Everything is interconnected, and millets are a key. I'll say I'm going to share one case study how millets connect multiple of these SDGs. So let's talk about this particular thing. In this case study, I'm going to share about this particular paper and what did we learn from doing this research. So in this research, as we know, millets are a group of multiple products, like multiple grains. Here you can see this is amaranth, like banyan millet, finger millet, kudo millet. And each millet, what we try to do is we characterize them based on their scientific name, geography of domestication, because they have been they've been in existence for thousands and thousands of years, right? So when did they start domesticating these for human consumption? So that curiosity led to different millets. You can see East Africa, India, Japan, Mexico, Central America. So it's like 6,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. So before even humans were even part of this system, these millets, the ancient grains, have been here. And so it's such an interesting research to see, and to see about, like, see the diversity, different languages. Even like within India, you have multiple languages. So we wanted to see how they are being called. For example, finger millet. Arina was talking about finger millet in Ghana. So you can see in Swahili, like, in different parts, we try to get different names of the same finger millet in different languages, and we were able to get some names from African continent as well, in Swahili, how they call it, and so on. So at least when we're talking to people, once we group everything as millets, sometimes it might get lost, right? So trying to see how they are called in different languages helps us connect. Also connects with the ancestral roots. Okay, we use ragi for doing this, or you can talk to people because they might not know the scientific name, they might not know the English name for it, but they know their native name, how it's used to be called. So that was the interesting research, and I learned a lot in doing this. And also for little millet, pearl millet, porso millet, sorghum, even like pearl millet was the one that we got multiple names in different languages, and also sorghum, we got a lot of different names from different languages. So, and also here is an image about how it looks from the plant and how the grains look. And why we wanted to do is because the size varies, and that leads to the nutritional content also will change. So let me go back to the, now we've seen how the grains and different names are there. So what happened to all of them? As you see, they've been here for 5,000 years. They've been here. So what happened?
Kiruba, I'm sorry to interrupt. We have about just a minute left, so I wish there was an easier way to indicate time. So sorry.
No problem.
Yeah,
no problem.
Please continue.
Yes, it's 1 minute. I can go from there. So what we did is, so here we did a study about how there is a decline from 1961 to 2017. You can see the decline in the yield of millets. Like after the world wars, then you can, like, you can see this is an Asia, like a trend for Asia. So you can see there is a decline in the production of the millets. So that's the reason it was not available for many people to even develop into food or consume it. But except for communities that still had the ancient knowledge, were able to preserve those grains and grow it. And we've covered this. I just wanted to touch on this, why it's important to study these at in scientific ways, because this is the first study we were able to put it under the microscope and see different structures. This is for finger millet. You can see micropores here, and pearl millet, and so on. And there was a question in the chat about the functionality of food. Like, this will affect the functionality of food. And you can see the amaranth, it has a beautiful quote here. So understanding the traditional knowledge and also the scientific. So when they both come together in symbiosis, then we can create systems that are more circular and can also, like, not only address the problems of climate change and climate resilience, but also improve the health through food. So that way, I would like to conclude by saying this is an amazing, like, it's not one person, it's a team of people who work, and that's my team. And thank you for your patience.